Heavenly Father, Divine Mother, friend, beloved God, Jesus Christ, Babaji Krishna, Lahiri Mahashaya, Swami Sri Yukteswar, our beloved Guru Deva, Paramahansa Yoganandaji, saints of all religions, friend and guide, Swami Kriyananda, we humbly bow before all of you. Divine Mother, help us to remember always that we are pure manifestations of divine energy. Help us to remove all egoic limitations that would have us consider any lacks in ourselves, any failures, anything that allows us to think of ourselves as less than being made in your image. We are thine. Help us to expand into your consciousness, into your light, into your love. Om, peace, amen. Let's meditate together now for a few minutes. Sitting upright, focusing our attention, our awareness at the point between the eyebrows. Shoulders back, heart wide open, asking God, Divine Mother, reveal thyself. Come to me now. Om, peace. Amen. We'll have some music now.
Hello there, brother Bluebell, play me a tune today. The breezes on the meadow have made you look so gay. The meadowlarks are singing, joys in the air. Come set your bells a-ringing, you've gladness to share. Hello there, sister Dewdrop, linger a little while. Your colors in the sunlight would make a monarch smile. What need have I for treasures, diamonds or gold? The fairest of all pleasures are here to behold. Hello there, dearest kinsmen, rebels and laughing broods. Your timid little beetles that hide in private nooks. God made us of His gladness, come then and sing, to cure the world of sadness. So ring, bell, bell, ring, to cure the world of sadness. So ring, bell, bell, ring, to cure the world of sadness. So ring, bell, bell, ring.
Bravo. Are we good? Great. You know, so many of you have either watched or listen to these talks. I know because I get a lot of notes from people who aren't able to join live, but everybody's been listening to me. This is the third from the last secret on emotional healing. So we've been together, I think it's almost a year, maybe more, doing this now. And every time I do it, I haven't really considered the song that's being sung, and usually I comment on it, because as I'm sitting here listening to somebody sing it, it comes to me what it is that Swamiji had in mind for this reading in this song. So tonight, the reading is on low self-esteem. And even saying those words, I don't know what anybody else feels, but it just, any time today that I've plugged into this, read The Secret again, it puts a drag on my energy. I mean, like a physical, literal drag, low self-esteem, just saying those words. I don't want to say them too much, but I'm afraid I have to say them a lot tonight, unfortunately. So this song, Hello There, Brother Bluebell, I couldn't figure it out. They were practicing, and I said, does anybody understand what this song has to do with this reading? So Keshava, who's here with us tonight, which was great, he pulled out his phone, and he looked it up. And Swamiji says about it, and I'm not going to remember the words exactly, and I really wish I could, but he said, this is just a lighthearted, fun song. In essence, he said, don't try and figure it out. There's nothing else to it. And it was just so funny. It's like there's no meaning other than it's lighthearted and it's fun. And I was standing off to the side watching everybody. Robbie has a big smile on her face. Sarah's sort of bouncing around to the music in the nicest way. People were just, not everybody, but a lot of people, myself included, just totally uplifted by it. So once again, Swamiji, I just love how he said that, sort of like, don't even think about it, just enjoy it. So that's what we did. I would love to think that that would help people overcome this feeling of low self-esteem. I can relate to it. I have to say, fortunately, something that's historical for me now. Many times I can relate as recently as the afternoon before I give the talk. As you know, I've given many, like right in the moment, flash news events of an experience in my life that relates to the emotion that we're talking about, but not with low self-esteem, so I feel very blessed in that way. But it feels like such a sad place for me. That's what it brings up in me, that it just feels so sad that people go through the world feeling that. I did struggle with it when I was young. I was just looking for myself and trying to figure out who I was and what I could bring to the world, really was it. The question, did I have anything at all to bring to the world? And that wasn't how it went through a very young mind, but it was like that. And it's just an awful feeling to feel that you're not good enough, whatever that means. Even saying those words now, it's like good enough for what or for whom or in what situation. It just speaks to the confusion that the ego can create within us. That's what I feel when I hear that. It feels confusing to me. What are we doing? Who are we comparing ourselves to? Which is really what that's about. And often you see people, whether they look like they have low self-esteem or there's arrogance about them, very often it still is low self-esteem. There are many people who have perfected that art of they don't feel arrogant because it's not what's driving them that they look arrogant or they can behave that way, because it's a fine line with that issue of low self-esteem running right down the middle. How do we compensate for that? And I think it's pretty obvious that in the world, And again, even for us, because to some degree we're all still dealing with that hold that the ego has on us. We're all headed in the right direction. Our intentions are good, just by virtue of the fact that we're here. And, I think that it sets us up for freedom. I'm trying to remember right now where I just read this, but I can't. But just yesterday or the day before, as I'm preparing for about 3 or 4 different talks, tonight was one of them. Tomorrow's Kriya, of course. I hope you can all be with us for our first indoor Kriya for a couple of years now, actually, though you can still join on Zoom, but I hope as many of you as possible will come in. And then Sunday service, and I actually haven't even read that reading, but the title of the reading is, What is it to fail spiritually? So there's all of these talks, plus a couple of programs around Christmas that I've been thinking about picking up a book here or there, just meditating on, listening to music, just trying to have the inspiration flow. But I came across where Yogananda actually said and explained the phrase, God watches the heart. And it's just so, it's so reassuring, isn't it? So I'm saying, no matter where we are, no matter how much we can slip into this place of low self-esteem, the fact that we are who we are and we're looking for teachings in the right places, we're looking for inspiration, we're looking for soul expansion, is wonderful for us because God's watching our heart. It was, we say that a lot. It was very touching for me to read it. I hope I come across it again. In other words, I hope it's some book that I left on my dining room table saying, gee, I better get back to that story. Because hearing him explain it, we say it all the time, but hearing the situation in which he first said it was a deep experience for me. But it's true, we now know that's true, and we feel it. So again, hopefully we can't get stuck in these places for too long of all of these emotions. That's why we're looking at these secrets for healing in this way. But this feeling of low self-esteem is so clearly egoically, I say motivated, but that's not right. It so clearly speaks to the hold that the ego has on us. And I used the phrase before that we're all looking for soul expansion, because the more expansive we can be, the further away from ego we are. And, we have to fight these battles in any way that we can, because the ego's just so powerful. When the ego has us, it's very contractive. And in that contraction, it becomes much more about me and I. And then we can feel sorry for ourselves, think we're not doing a good job. And again, often it's a comparison to something, that somebody else is doing it better, or somebody else is judging us, or somebody else isn't liking us. These are all the things that come up with low self-esteem. Whereas when we're more expansive, we move more towards soul qualities, or maybe it's the other way around. As we move more and more towards soul qualities, when we can remember them, when we can actually remember them in the way that we allow them to take charge of our life, then we're moving more towards what our soul knows to be true, not what our ego thinks is true. And in some ways, what Swamiji and Master say over and over, in one way or another, but they say it many ways about self-esteem, is that, well, first of all, it's very tricky, because in the world, so much of what we've learned, how do we get beyond a sense of low self-esteem? It's almost always by feeding our ego. This is what happens. We don't feel good enough about ourselves. We will, I mean, you can almost fill in the blank here. We'll get another degree. We'll buy a bigger house. We'll let everybody know that we're really good at certain things. It's just all of these ways, and even with affirmations that we can use, which in and of themselves can seem good. And I think in a way, something more positive like our affirmations aren't bad, because it's almost like they're lifting the ego up. Even when we say, I am strong, I am free, we want it to be about our soul. But from this place of low self-esteem, very often it's about giving our ego a boost, just like going back to school again, getting another degree so that we have more letters after our names, we have better jobs, we have bigger houses. We do, I've often said, when people feel the worst about themselves or they're struggling the most in the world, it's always fascinated me to watch, like, for instance, somebody feeling terrible about themselves, they'll go and they'll buy a new house, like as if that's going to fix them. Couples are struggling with each other, they'll have another child. It seems like, so what were you thinking when you made that decision? But of course, people aren't. It's just anything that will give the ego a boost. So all by way of saying what happens in the world, and if we're unconscious, is that we do those things that are allowing the ego to have a stronger hold on us. We're feeding it, we're giving it strength. It's very understandable to me. It's not totally understandable when people have more children to deal with their marital woes, but it's more understandable if they buy a snazzy new car or even a pair of shoes or whatever it is, just to help themselves feel better. And of course, that's not always bad. I've said it over and over. I like clothes, I love shoes, I have a nice car. So it's not that doing those things is in and of itself a bad thing. It can be a wonderful thing if we're not using it as an antidote to something about the way the ego's drawing us down, because it won't work. It's just feeding the ego. It's not bad if we're not attached to it, if we're not just holding on to it for dear life. It never quite feels that way, but that's a lot of what's happening. And I've said this many times, but I'm very aware of it right now for a lot of reasons, just situations that are floating around my life. The ego is so good at rationalizing and having us believe it. It's just, honestly, sometimes it just frightens me because I see it. It's easier to see it in other people. Of course, it always is. I see other people making such sense out of decisions they made or directions they're going, and how they chalk it up to the right reasons. And again, nothing's terrible. It's not that I stand in horrible judgment of that, but when you can see right through it and you think, no, that's pretty much just something your ego wants to do. It's not, a gift from God. It's an interesting thing watching when these things happen, and it scares me because we don't see it in ourselves. It's very difficult because the ego's so good at doing what it does, which is fooling us. So we rationalize a lot, and that's what happens when we're trying to lift ourselves from a place of, it's funny, suddenly I forgot, of low self-esteem. I couldn't even remember it. I've had such an aversion to it all day. It's interesting. So what we actually want to be doing is anything and everything we can do, not to move into a place of boosting ourselves up, not to move into a place of strengthening the ego. What we actually want to do is to be moving into a place of self-forgetfulness. That's what we need to do. We need to get away from this little self because our souls cannot feel little. It's in that littleness that we feel contracted when our mind goes to that place. It's in that littleness that we feel that. We feel smaller. We have lower self-esteem. But our souls could never feel that way because our souls know at all times that we are, each of us, unique, the center of the universe, which Master has told us over and over, each one of us. Everything about the universe emanates from that. Remember when Master said in Autobiography of a Yogi, when he was given that experience, I can't remember which one it was, and it doesn't matter, I don't know. I think it is when he came back from the Himalayas, and Sri Yukteswar gave him an experience of samadhi, and he said that he, let me just see if I can call up the quote exactly. It's beautiful. I don't think it'll come to me right now. But when he said that he knew in that moment that everything emanated from a point of intuitive perception in the core of his own being. He said it much more beautifully than that. And you've probably all heard the phrase, and I've repeated it or read it many times. But that is the truth about our existence. We're not little. We are one point among countless, infinite points that all are holding the entirety of cosmic consciousness within us. That's how big we are. That's how perfect we are. That's how clear we are. Everything else is an illusion. So when we're sitting in that place of low self-esteem, rather than look to the material world to fix it, we have to look to the world of spirit. We have to listen to our soul's call and respond there. And that is the only true way of being lifted up out of it, that state, again, of low self-esteem, of littleness, of contraction. It's an illusion. There can't be any reality to it, even though it feels so real when we're in it. And it can feel so painful. Of course, it is painful. It's like taking infinity and constricting it into, remember what Master said when he remembers when he was born and bringing infinity into that little baby body? And he said it was like putting on a heavy winter coat on a hot summer's day. And just that feeling, because I have an aversion to that, something that I developed later in life, but being confined in areas that are really hot, like getting into a car if it's been 100 degrees outside. I just have to leave a door open until the air conditioning kicks in or do something. I'm sure I could bear it if I had to, but since I don't usually have to. That sense, when he said those words, it was like, oh my God, I can relate to that. I'm probably remembering being bored, though I was not infinite, but coming in from the astral world, this must still feel pretty small. So I see what he's talking about. That's how we're all living. And if we try and solve the problem on this plane, it just simply, it can't work. There's no way, because it's all ego-driven, and it's the ego itself only in the first place that could have a low self-esteem. Nothing else about us could live there. So our job is to, what? I mean, yell for help, find a friend, listen to just some uplifting song, even one that has no meaning, so that we can be like Sarah and just be doing this and look so filled with joy. And then suddenly what happens to that sense of low self-esteem. I've had this experience many times, maybe some of you have too, where I've done something, and these last years of my life, mostly it's around teaching, sometimes it's around behaving badly with a person, saying something mean or hurtful, and it just hurts my heart to feel like I've hurt anybody else, so that just happens to me. And I can perseverate about that. Again, by God's grace, and I mean it, it's not happening, it rarely happens anymore, but it was not that many years ago, not that long ago, where I could go home. Many of you have heard me say this. If I thought I gave a talk that wasn't perfect, whatever that means, that's absurd to begin with, but in my mind, in my egoic mind at the time, wasn't perfect. Sometimes I wouldn't sleep for two nights. Sometimes I'd be saying, I can never speak again. I represent Ananda. This is terrible. Look what I just did. What did I just do? People are going to walk away from Ananda because I gave a bad talk. But it would feel that way. That was my karma. That was a vritti that was so powerful and so real, until almost always, eventually, the thought would come, why are you relating to your mistakes or this perceived failure? Even I would say to myself, so what? What if you gave the worst talk you've ever given one night or one Sunday or one whatever? And if you said something that was mean to somebody, even that, you do the best you can do. You tell them you know it, you're sorry. But it's the ego that wants to have us keep identifying with our mistakes. Those examples are gross. Sometimes we're unaware of it. It's happening unconsciously. And so our ego stays identified. But eventually we have to say to ourselves, we're not that mistake. We're not that bad talk. We're not that whatever it is. We are cosmic consciousness in this little body. That's what we are. And the more we can remember that, we cannot keep feeling small. Swamiji writes about self-esteem. The secret of overcoming low self-esteem is to realize that you are an integral part of everything that is. That is so important. You are an integral part of everything that is. That's huge. That's not small. That's not contractive. That's nothing. That has nothing to do with your ego. Your ego can't make you be an integral part of everything that is. That's absurd. That's only the soul that can live that way. That's only the soul that remembers that it's a part, for you are a part of all that is. These lines from the festival that keep coming back, each line, listen to it differently every time we hear it. It's so meaningful to have that realization that we are a part of all that is. And more than that, we're an integral part of it. Swamiji wouldn't say it if it wasn't true. So what does that mean? So he says the secret to overcoming low self-esteem is to remember that, sustained forever by that power which brought the very universe into existence. So we're a part of all that is, an integral part, sustained forever by that power that brought the universe into existence. If you read this and you remember that this is truth, I mean, if we kept it around so that when we were feeling down, we just pulled it out and read those two sentences, God's power is what we are. It's not just flowing through us. We are it. Swamiji says that's what's sustaining us. So the truth is, here's the truth, and here's what I've come to know. I don't always live it perfectly, by far, but I know this. It's absolutely the truth that I cannot give this is my ego talking, whatever a great talk is, every time. I can't. Nobody can. God can. That's what's important. These masters can, because that is the power that's sustaining us. So we come back to that place of self-forgetfulness. If I'm over-prepared for a talk, and I think I have to make every point that I wrote down, it's not a good talk. It's like Shanti's up here talking. It's not so great. It's okay sometimes, but not inspiring. Not like when Shanti gets herself out of the way. She's prepared. She's a channel. And then the masters can flow through her. And then it's the master's energy that everybody feels. And then, no matter whether a point's made, a point isn't made, a story never gets finished, all the things that can happen when you stand up to speak, doesn't matter, because what everybody has felt is God's power, not me. I have nothing to do with it, really, except meditating as much as I can to become an ever-increasingly pure channel of thy love. That's the goal. Get this self out of the way. Then how could there be any low self-esteem? There can't be. If we can get ourselves out of the way. And that's what Swamiji is saying. And then he says, open your heart to life. Cease seeing yourself as a lonely planet, waterless on an empty desert. Oh my God, that's so mournful to me in a way. A lonely planet, waterless on an empty desert. It just sounds hopeless. Hopeless. It is hopeless. But it's not hopeless if we open our hearts to life. It's not hopeless if we remember that we're a part of all that is. It's not hopeless if we remember that we are sustained by the power that created everything as we see it, as we know it. And you can't, just like we always say, if you're angry with somebody and you can find the way, or if you've been hurt by somebody, to open your heart and to love them, you can't sustain those two feelings in the same moment. You can't. And it's really what this is about. I'll share a private and somewhat intimate story with you. Everybody knows we got this new puppy. Everybody knows puppies are hard. And what everybody doesn't know is this adorable little puppy came in, and it just turned my life upside down, literally. I've never lived in the midst of such chaos as what my life has been like for the past 2 months. Somehow I managed to walk and talk and get a little sleep and teach and come to work. It's amazing to me. I'm sort of watching it like, how am I doing that? Because it's impossible to talk about, nor do I want to take a lot of time. Well, the other part of that is the same thing has happened in my partner Barry's life as well. Barry has a little less ability to expand beyond it, to keep his heart open in the midst of it. We're a little different that way. So I have Max and I have Barry, and it's been a challenge. So I've been getting irritated more than I usually do. Usually I don't get that irritated. But recently, I've been finding myself at home wanting to yell a little more. And I'm not going to yell at this little 7-pound adorable puppy. So who would I yell at? I yell at Barry. And it doesn't go well, as you can imagine. And I haven't been feeling good about it, but I've also been feeling that place that goes like, if he could just love me better, if he could just appreciate me more, if he could, it's absurd, but I'm sharing with you honestly how absurd I've been. And I've been going over this, then I catch myself. Yesterday morning, I awakened from sleep, like wide awake. This is exactly how it happened. Up in a moment. Master, what should I do about Barry? Just like that, right out of a sound sleep, but I was awake. And just as quickly, literally without a beat's pause, came the answer, love him more. One sentence, Love him better. Second sentence, open your heart. Just like that. And it's hard to describe because it was out of a sound sleep that I woke up longing for an answer. The answer was right there. I felt like Master was like this, waiting for me to ask the question, because it felt that way. It felt like it came from outside of me. And in that very moment of waking up, not in agony, but in such need and just needing it to be different, and then getting that, love him more. Not like, if he loved me, he would say to me, we really miss you, come home this afternoon. That would feel so loving. Or all those human, it's absurd. I should be embarrassed saying it to you guys, never mind. It's being recorded forever. But it's true. It's exactly where I went. I'm tired, I'm pressured, my life is upside down, so I want more from him. He has no more to give me. Master says, love him more. In just the same momentary response, I was so relieved. I was alone I was in the community, alone in my bed, and I just started laughing. And I literally laughing out loud. If anybody else was there, they would have thought either I was dreaming or lost my mind. In a way, I did lose my mind, which was such a relief to be out of my mind and into that place of wisdom, of remembering that the solution to, it wasn't low self-esteem, but it doesn't matter. A lot of these feelings take us to the same place, that place of feeling less, contracted, needing, wanting. If he would just do this, I would feel this. No, if we do this, if we open, if we remember who we are, if we sing this silly but delightful, actually, uplifted chant, we do it, then we cannot stay. We are literally transcending ego when we do those things. That opening of the heart that I honestly feel, I believe this, that Master just came and did it for me. I felt like I was wallowing in self-pity. A little exaggerated, but good for the story and the point. I was feeling sorry for myself. And he just came and said, there's only one way out of this. And it was so true. And then I wrote Barry an email, and I said, I have a great idea. I'm busy until Sunday, which I am. But I said, how about a Sunday afternoon when I get home, let's have a date. We haven't had a date. We can even bring Max on the date. Let's the three of us, I'll make us a great dinner. We'll watch a movie. I felt so expansive, instantly, totally uncharacteristic of him. He wrote me back, I love that idea. You got it. I'm all in. It was so beautiful. I mean, it's exactly the lesson. And it's a lesson many places in our lives. But it's the answer here. It's the only way through this dilemma. Again, the ego doesn't know the answer. The ego wants us to feel me, me, me. I need, I want. And as I said before, here is the value of spiritual friendship, to be able to find people that you trust and to feel safe enough to say, tell me the truth. Because if they can tell you the truth, soul to soul, that doesn't mean they're perfect, but if they can get beyond themselves and help you, best bet to get out of it. Well, of course, prayer, and if you happen to be lucky enough to be awakened at 4 a.m, but we all know that doesn't happen very often. It happens enough that we all say, wow, we're on the right path. We're headed in the right direction. That was God himself. That was lovely, thank you. I was about to make a big mistake in my marriage, is what I was really about to do. Who wants that? But we can extrapolate it anywhere. If when our self-esteem is low, we are not making good decisions, not even about how to get out of it. So when we're looking for those long-term successes, when we're looking to expand, when we're looking to continue our soul journey, we have only to turn inside, not out. It never works out there. We say it all the time about everything. Not that we don't want to be out there. I'm going on a date on Sunday, and that just feels wonderful. But that's not what made me feel better. I felt better, and then I could invite my partner on a date. And that's always the way it works. And it's the way it works with self-esteem. So make sure that we're looking for answers in the right places, and then we go for it. Okay, so we have a few minutes here. Let's see. I didn't look at you guys once tonight, but you all look great. So anybody have any comments or questions? Eloisa? Hold on for 1 minute, honey, because Lakshmi's going to make it so I can hear you. Okay. Go ahead, Eloisa. You have a comment? Can you hear me? I don't think they can.
I can hear you. Yeah. Can you hear me? Thumbs up if you can hear me. Yes. Yay. I loved your story, Shantima. I could give a master class on being self-critical, you know? And I think being in medicine it brings out that even more. You know, like you can't make mistakes. And I think very, very conscientious people go into that. And as Asha has said, you know, as we grow spiritually, our lessons to learn become amplified, you know? So I definitely am very self-critical. I am my own worst critic, you know? So many stories where, you know, I was having a difficult time because I was not good enough. I didn't show up the way I should have, you know, for other people. But, you know, I just actually listening to the talks where I had commented or had read, you know, like being super self-critical because I've read at some of our events, and I just thought that everybody did so well, but why would they let me up there with the rest of the group to read? It was just awful, you know, driving home. Instead of being blissful, being super self-critical about why didn't I do a better job? And then it took listening, so for that particular time, it took listening to the whole event again, including the reading that I did. And I felt so much, I felt goodness, you know? I felt, I saw myself in a kinder light than I did from the inside critical person. Like looking at myself from the outside, listening in on that reading, I could see goodness, I could see being a vessel, which was different than the self-talk that was inside my head. And I think since that time, I just say, that's not how it really is, you know. This talk that's inside about how I'm just not good enough is not the way it really is, and because it's not me who's showing up, you know. Some part of me is getting out of the way. That when I went back and listened to that reading, I could feel it. I was reading and I could feel goodness coming through. And I was like, wow, that's, you know, oh, I could give a master class on this. And one more story. last year, in 2020, it was awful. And I remember just being so critical about not meditating enough, not doing energization. Like, who was I kidding? You know, what a fake, I didn't do energization today. And I remember sitting for meditation at the end of the day, and just immediately you didn't do energization, you blah, 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 all that kind of stuff. And then immediately, God, Master came in, and he literally, in my mind, the thought came flooding all the good things I did that day. You know, I started my work with a prayer. I called my mom at lunchtime. I helped my son go to sleep. So many good things. You know, I taught him little yoga poses and things like that. And so here I was like, oh, I'm so awful. And then immediately a flow of memories of goodness that had happened during the day. And when I told the story in one of the classes and I shared, it was like God was telling me, this is what I saw you do today. You know, I was like, I'm awful, how come, what a fake. And then God just flooded me with memory of a bunch of really good things that I did. And so, you know, I'm better than I used to be. But, yeah.
Good for you, Eloisa. Good for you. We're trying to figure out the sound here. Give me a minute. Yeah, okay. Yeah, that's what we're all doing. We're either inching our way forward, or every once in a while we take a giant step forward. Sometimes we get a little run in, really make progress. But to have stories like that, memories like that, knowings to look back to and say, that's the truth, not what my ego's trying to tell me. That is the truth. You brought up another point that I want to make, because when you were talking about the first story that you were sharing, I realized that for so many instances in life, but in and around the, you know, again, the first part of your sharing, we are pure energy. We are pure magnetism. And when we're walking around saying, I'm bad, I'm bad, I'm bad, I'm not enough, I'm not, that's what we draw to ourselves. And then the ego jumps in and it goes, see, I told you all along, you're terrible. So everything we do to change our magnetism, or everything, our consciousness, everything that the masters do for us to help us, even in an instant, change our consciousness, which changes its energy. Our energy changes, so our magnetism changes. And then just like what you're talking about right now, all of a sudden you get flooded with all of those things that you did. And they're so big and they're so beautiful. And you draw more of them because your consciousness has changed. Because you, like all of us, are getting better. We are getting better. We're actually making spiritual progress. And I'm thrilled that you shared what you shared, because we all have to remember that, yeah, we can find a lot of mistakes in our day if we want. We can find many ways that we didn't do this well enough, not that well enough, not this. But the more we repeat that, the more that's our mantra, the more of that we get. And just either because our mind opens up and we see something differently, or moments like what you're sharing of grace, where you really feel Master said to you, wait a minute, no, let me show you, you did all of these fabulous things. Change in consciousness, change in energy, change in magnetism. We make progress. And that progress stays with us. Even if tomorrow we're messing up again, we're messing up from a different place, from a more uplifted place, a more expanded place. And that matters. That's what we call the spiritual path. That's what we're all doing. So those are very beautiful stories, and thank you for sharing them. And, you know, we can all relate. That's part of why I like to share my stories and not simply talk about the progress I've made or this or that. It's like, listen, we're all still doing this, and we can all relate to it, and it gives us hope. And it helps us see this is the nature of the human condition, but God is watching our heart, and we will succeed. We will actually realize in some moment that we are a part of all that is. It will no longer just be a thought or a reminder or an affirmation. We're living it. And just like what you said, I'm getting better. We're all living it more and more and more. The moments are coalescing. And there's many more bright moments in our days, weeks, months, lives, many more times where we can wake up at 4 a.m. and giggle because Master met us in bed. That was pretty wonderful, you know, or he came to you to remind you, yeah, this is what we're doing here. So beautiful. Anybody else before we close for the night? Robbie? Yeah.
Gratitude is what, for me, is a way to get out of that ego consciousness. If you can find something to be grateful for, and there always is, it seems, something, some kind of blessing from God or the Masters to be grateful for, and I've experienced a lot of that recently. And then you kind of get away from judging yourself and measuring yourself, which is an ego thing, and you get into feeling you're loved because he blessed you, God blessed you, or one of the Masters blessed you, so you must be worthy of it. And then you feel more a part of the whole and not this tiny little ego thing where you're constantly striving to measure up to your own standards, you know, wherever those standards came from.
Yeah. Thank you for. Okay, sorry. Sound doesn't seem to like sound as far as I understand it. We have to be apart. These sounds need to separate or it doesn't work. But anyway, thank you, Robbie. That was a good point, a very good point, and clearly, I mean, also the truth. Once again, a real example that we can't be feeling gratitude, recognizing goodness, wanting to love somebody better, have all of that be happening and stay little. That little word is a word that Master used, interestingly, and he kept using it in relation to this quality. So, yeah, it just doesn't work. So when you conjure up reasons, images, whatever they are, consciously, wait a minute, let me feel grateful. What do I have to feel grateful for? Of course, we have an infinite number of things to feel grateful for. But it's a very good point. You cannot rest in both of those places at the same time. You won't. And again, we're not brand new souls on this path. So as soon as it happens, our soul is like, yes, of course, a breath of fresh air. That's where we want to be, not in that place of feeling terrible. So thank you for commenting on that, mentioning that. All right, friends, next week, is it that we meet at 5 or the week after?
Next week is 7, the week after 7.
Okay, so now we're going to have next week, which we usually don't do, and then the next week. Somehow we all got into thinking we had to finish this series in 2021. It fit, right? It'll give us a sense of satisfaction to get it all in the year. So we're going to be now 3 weeks in a row. Next week we'll meet at 7 o'clock again. The following week, and I don't have the dates, the 17th it is, we will meet at 5 o'clock because there's a 7 o'clock program here. There's so many wonderful things happening between now and New Year's. Try and be here for as much of it as you can. We have this great inspiration that came through Lakshmi, I think last year, about the 12 days of Christmas. And you know, everybody here, there's so much creativity and energy. It was great last year. It's going to be even better this year. But most of all, tomorrow, Kriya, please be here. Even if you can't make it to the morning meditation, the evening Kriya initiation, we have, I think, five people being initiated and 2 people coming here for the first time. So 7, but a lot of other people coming to renew our vows, a renewal. And it's just nothing else that happens after this will be anywhere near as meaningful as our Kriya renewal. If you can't possibly come, Sai Ganesh sent out a note today to all Kriya bonds saying write to him and he'll send you a Zoom link, but I don't think I have to tell any of you. I think more than anything this year, what I've heard is how much people want this blessing from the masters through a Kriya Charya. Very different than in a Zoom meeting. Zoom meeting works if that's all we have, but if you can come, please come, and hopefully we'll see you often, including next Friday night. God bless you all.